Make Ariana, you're still okay? You're good. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so first of all, thanks everybody for turning up. Tina is the PI for the project and is joining us from UPI in Slovenia. On the Irish side, there's quite a few people here because we've quite a lot of deliverables. Anna is our project manager and Damien is our specialist in terms of blended learning. So what we want to do for the next few weeks is to go over the previous project we've been involved in. A bit of noise just coming in the back there. I've just muted Ariana, right? So Ariana, hopefully you're still listening. So the plan is that we did a project together before, and that project was quality blended learning. And out of that project, we produced quite a few different pieces of material. One was a handbook, one was a gym, which really had interactive material. And in TU Dublin, we created a course which Damien has led. This project is to move to train the trainer, so to encourage more people to be able to deliver the training that we've done as a result of the previous one. The purpose of this course is very simple. Show you what's happened before and prepare you for the next phase of this project, which is a case study, which Damien will be going through the details of. So everybody who's part of the teaching component of this phase will be asked to take what we're talking about here and just to attempt to introduce either new blended learning, if you're not doing any, or augment the blended learning you're currently doing. And with a very structured case study format, to bring that information back to us. And then in Greece next year, what we'll do is we'll take that feedback, take those case studies, and construct a training course for supporting you to train other people. Okay, so that's how the project flows. And the case studies that you will write will be part of the material that we'll give you to critically analyze how effective the blending process is going, right? Because it doesn't always work. Sometimes we have to change things. The very end of the course then will be to take your feedback when you actually go and blend, and after you blend and after you train other people to blend, and say, what is the final course that we can construct to give people the ability to train other people. At the end of the last project, we had trained a number of people, but we realized it's a training the trainer to have more people, more educators able to influence people around Europe, which is really the end goal of the project. So ask lots of questions. We have lots of experience. I'll be back giving a case study on some of my experience doing blended learning and some of the things that worked and some of the things that did not work. And I think the things that don't work, myself and Damien have spoken about a bit, are where a lot of the real learning comes. So if we want to try things, we have to be really critical to see, did it work? Is it a good way to blend things, or is it not working? And do we need to consider something different for a different audience and a different topic? So that's kind of all I have to say. I really appreciate people making time to come and to go through the course. And if you can't make it, we are recording this material and we'll be putting it together into an easily accessible format for over the next 6 months. Okay, so that's it for me, Damien. I'm going to hand it back to you, unless Tina, you want to say anything?
Not really. You did a great intro. Thank you very much. I look forward to this course and wish us all good work.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Damien. I'll leave it to you.
Thanks a
Thank
million,
you.
guys.
Thank you so much for your introduction.
Thanks a million. Brilliant. So yeah, exactly as Paul said, I think the goal really here is to have a go at blending something and see what works and what doesn't work. And what doesn't work is way better than what does work. In martial arts, they say you can either win or learn. And I think that's exactly right. So what I'm hoping is we'll try a few activities. Some of them won't work at all. We'll document them and just say to other people, look, here's the reasons why I don't think they worked. Because we didn't have the right equipment, or the student group aren't receptive or whatever it was, and then we can say what not to do. The problem with a lot of educational research is that people tend to publish things that went well and leave out things that didn't go well, which is a shame, because the things that go badly are really where there's a lot you can learn, particularly what not to do. So that's the BLITT project. Anyway, most of the participants here will be familiar with this notion, but just to make sure, because some disciplines make a big point of this and others don't. If I'm trying to get a house built, there's a few phases I follow. The first thing I do is figure out what I need. Let's say I have a family of, I don't know, three boys and 3 girls, and I'm Mike Brady and my wife, and we've got Alice the maid. So then if I have 3 boys and 3 girls plus 2 parents and a maid, I probably need 2 or 3 bathrooms, 5 or 6 bedrooms, whatever, a sitting room, a back garden. So we list out the requirements. However, if there's only, I don't know, 2 people in a family, we might need a different style of house. But the first thing we do when we're developing any project, including building a house, is figure out what our requirements are. What do we need? And we list them out. Then we start to design those things. Sometimes we ask somebody else, like an architect, to draw some pictures on the basis of the requirements we give them. Sometimes we can design the things ourselves, depending on the type of activity that's occurring. There will be changes that will occur from the design to the requirements, of course, because that's always the case. And then we move on to actually building the house in this case. And definitely the builder will have some suggestions, and they might say, oh, well, the architect has put the master bedroom in the front, but I want to put it in the back. Can we swap around these, move this wall here? It would be better if the bathroom upstairs and downstairs are just up and down from each other so that the piping can go straight up and down rather than across. Anything like that changes somewhat the process of a house. There's a snag, a checking process where we see the taps leak, or do all the press doors close correctly? Are the locks working on the windows? Things like that. So this rough style where we define what we're looking for, design it using some kind of pictorial representation, build it, and then test and evaluate it. Extremely common across multiple disciplines. Some disciplines don't necessarily make this explicit, whereas the discipline I'm in, computer science, we would definitely have very definite models and methodologies of this. In the UK, the British Design Council sat around thinking about how to design any kind of product, and they defined approximately the same thing. They said, let's have a stage at the start where we go as wide as possible and think of as many requirements, as many bathrooms, as many bedrooms, as many configurations as possible. And they looked at that as a stage where we're spreading out, thinking of lots and lots of ideas. Diverging is a word they tend to use for that. Then once we're defining our design, drawing the blueprints, we're converging again, and we're going back into a more specific and detailed design. So the first half of those 2 stages I just mentioned, requirements and then design, that gets us to a point, hopefully an agreed point, a set of blueprints, or in computer science it might be a use case diagram or a class diagram or something like that in ERD. Once we are in the building phase, then there's lots of options we can do, lots of technologies we can use. If we're building a house, there's lots of materials we can use, lots of types of windows, lots of types of countertops, things like that. So again, it's a diverging phase where we have lots of options. But then once the build is completed and we're testing it, we're again coming down to a point, and the point is the house has been built, the can opener has been designed, the website has been designed, whatever it is, it's been designed. So because of the shape of diverging and converging, the British Design Council often refer to this as the double diamond process. And they have 4 Ds in it: discover, define, develop, and deliver. There is another D at the end, which is, I guess, evaluate, just to evaluate once more how effective it is after a long period of time, or maintain, or something like that. we won't worry too much about that for the moment. But if I'm referring to an approach to design, chances are during this process I'll be thinking of the double diamond model. So let's get down to the brass tacks. What is blended learning? Blended learning has multiple definitions. Generally speaking, it's a combination of some teaching that involves face-to-face and some teaching that has an e-learning component. Now in America, they call that online, and I understand why they call it that, but any old computer component at all. I might install a program on a student's laptop and give it to them that doesn't need the internet, and they can be running that at home. I could put PowerPoint slides on their computer, and they can read those at home, and that is still e-learning. So e-learning means anything to do with a computer, really. It can be connected to the internet, and we might refer to that as online. In Europe, we call it that. In America, they use the word online to mean just a computer. So sometimes you'll see in the literature blended learning as being defined as being face-to-face and online, but what they really mean is there's a classroom bit and a computer bit. That's all. That's all we're saying there. And hopefully with blended learning, we're combining the traditional classroom with the e-learning stuff. So we know with classrooms, we get really great things. We get to talk to the students face to face. We get interactions with them and immediate responses. We get to look at their faces and see how bored they are. We get effective collaboration with them, and we can motivate them to do stuff. We can say, come on guys, this is really exciting. We can get a sound machine and make funny sounds. That's not a funny sound. That's funny sound. So we can do all kinds of silly stuff like that in a classroom. We can do it online as well, but online also gives us things like, or e-learning gives us things like mobility, that the student doesn't have to be tied down to a location. We can also see, provided we're allowed to, see when they logged in, how often they've logged in. It is and the students who do not log in much into the virtual learning environments just don't do as well. So this is whether they're actually engaging with the materials. Globalization is another aspect to e-learning, but particularly online. The fact that a range of people from a range of locations can be involved in the teaching process at the same time. So that's always good. And then flexibility is another one that students can take the activities whenever they want to do them. So the goal of blended learning is to try and maximize these positive factors and eliminate any of the negative factors associated with both traditional classroom learning and e-learning. How much of a mix does it matter? Let's say you did 25% in the classroom and 75% online, or half and half, or even mostly in a classroom and somewhat online or using e-learning tools. It really doesn't matter. The term blended learning is a very loose term. Some researchers are very het up and say you must do at least 30% online or using e-learning and at least 20% in the classroom. So if you do 30% online or using e-learning, 70% in the classroom, you can do up to, but if you do at least 20% of the classroom, you can do 80% online or e-learning. What they say is if there's no e-learning component, it's just classroom learning. And if there's no online element, then it's just classroom. If there's no classroom element, then it's just online. They have this weird idea that if it's 1 to 30% e-learning or online, then it's still a classroom, but web facilitated. Look, the important message here is that blended learning is an umbrella term. It means a lot of different people to a lot of different things, to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. It shouldn't be taken very seriously or dogmatically. I think all we're thinking about here is if you have a class that's mainly online, to do a few sessions in a classroom. If you have a class that's mainly in person, to do a few sessions online. Integrated, flexible. And multi-mode or dual method learning is different terms for it. Sometimes it looks like this, where some Egypt stands in front of a green screen, and then by the magic of video editing, you can put them beside a whiteboard showing things on the board, which is kind of exactly like being in a classroom anyway. So we can definitely simulate being in a classroom. I suppose the benefit is, though, we can add in exciting, dynamic animations, and we could have the whole thing being on fire, and we could have my head exploding. The point I would make is, though, I'm not sure what the learning benefit of these things are. So we can do lots of crazy stuff, sure. We can create all kinds of technological marvels, but unless there's an actual benefit in terms of teaching for it, we just shouldn't be wasting our time on it. We can do it if we want, and it's fun, definitely, indeed. And I think it's good for the novelty value of the students, just to have a bit of fun with it and make it enjoyable. But if we're definitely spending hundreds of hours trying to make something beautiful that has no learning gain for the students, it's a shame. Like, it's a shame to waste that effort. We could figure out something. So simple is good in my mind. When I do most of my e-learning that I do, video in particular, I just use my camera phone and video myself speaking into the camera phone. It's amazing how effective that is, because it's a language the students speak very well. I'm just going to do a bit of theory. I'm sorry about this. It's just a 5-minute jobby, just to explain, I suppose, the philosophy behind the workbook, which is something we'll be talking about. So the philosophy behind the workbook is as follows, and this is exciting enough, I think. This British researcher, Diane Lorillard, said, when teachers are communicating with students, they both have brains. That was a shock for a lot of people, but apparently both teachers and students have brains. Okay, they also have life experience in those brains, and they also have a particular understanding of words and concepts and ideas already. So if I, as a teacher, am talking about a particular concept, I'm communicating it probably verbally and possibly with slides as well. I might be explaining a concept to a student, an idea, and I'm trying to transmit that into the student's brain. I have a lot of pre-existing knowledge of that concept as the lecturer, though, that the student won't have. So I have to be explaining it to make sure I explain the pre-existing information. I also have my own unique life experiences. So, for example, I grew up on a farm, so I might use terms different from somebody who didn't grow up on a farm. I know if I'm speaking to a physicist and I'm talking about somebody's weight, I'm thinking about it in kilograms and they're thinking about it in newtons, because weight is a force for physicists, not a mass quantity. So different people use terms to mean different things. God knows, as I said there, Americans use the term online to mean on a computer. Doesn't have to be connected to the internet. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. Whereas Europeans traditionally would mean on the internet when we use the term online. So if I'm communicating with an American group and I'm saying online, they're taking something totally different from what I mean. So when I'm, again, even if I have a clear idea what I'm explaining, because of their pre-existing knowledge of the concept and their own life experience, they might take it up differently. So we try and make concepts as clearly as possible. That's all that is. All I've said there is sometimes we need to over-explain stuff more than anything. If I was giving 2 examples of something, I probably need to give 3 examples or 4 or 5. That's all, or just add one on. Does that vaguely make sense? Is there anything there that is controversial or shocking or weird or wonderful?
Damien,
Too serious.
I would
Yes,
just
please.
like to comment on the term hybrid
Yes.
learning, because I have
Yes.
heard it a lot also in Slovenian, in our environment. And isn't it the difference between the blended and hybrid, when hybrid is when you have students in the classroom and at the same time some of them are tuning in via online channels. It's not like being but it's synchronous. It's synchronous.
Yes.
Yeah. So while blended is, yeah.
We had this very conversation in our last meeting, would you believe, about this very topic. Brian, I'm sure you.
Damien, thank you very much for that very excellent introduction. Actually, just wanted to come back with an observation. Like you mentioned about, like you have to be sort of. I would actually say that like it's quite good to try doing new things in the classroom, even if they don't work out, because otherwise you're never going to improve your teaching practice. You have to be a bit brave, and you have to do things which, maybe the next time you try them yourself, you're going to improve your delivery on that particular whatever it was you were going to teach, or whatever it was you were going to introduce. So that's the only thing I would just like to say. We shouldn't be too focused always on knowing what exactly the right thing, the best practice is. We kind of forgive ourselves if we go in and like try things and it doesn't always work out. And encourage ourselves to do that as well, because when we do that, then it gives our students more confidence to like experiment themselves and try new things themselves, be more creative.
100% agree with you, Brian. In fact, I make it a practice. I teach programming, and I make it a practice to make a mistake when I'm typing in the code for the first few times, because it's something they will experience 9 times out of 10 when they're writing their programs. So if they just see me always doing it perfectly, they immediately get frustrated and go, what the hell? Every time Damien does it, always works out. So occasionally I'll do it right first time, and I'll go, damn it, sorry guys, I did this right.
Yeah.
That is a 1 in a million occurrence in practice. In practice, what the students have to do is write a program. There's 59 errors in it. They change one thing, it goes up to 7,300. They change something else, it goes down to 2. They change something else, it goes up to 99. Then it starts working magically. But unless we model that in the classroom, if we just show them programs that work all the time, they're going, what's wrong with me? He's modeling it right. And the same with teaching, I think. I always say, if I don't have 2 terrible classes per semester and 2 excellent ones, I'm in trouble, because I'll always try something ridiculous anyway. And hell, if it doesn't work, that's okay. I'll also make this point as well, and I always say this to groups. If I believe that putting a banana on my head made me a better teacher, and I did that for a whole semester, and then the students got 50% higher marks as a consequence of that, was it because of the banana on my head? Was it because I was motivated thinking the banana would make it work? Or was it because the students looked and thought, oh, well, he's trying something different, so we'll get behind it as well? Marshall McLuhan famously did this factory experiment where this factory owner guy said, how can I improve productivity? And Marshall McLuhan said, take all your light bulbs that are fluorescent and change them to incandescent. Productivity went up hugely for 3 months, and then it went back down. So the guys went to Marshall McLuhan again and said, what will we do? And he said, oh, it's easy. Just take all your incandescent light bulbs and change them back to fluorescent. Productivity went up. It was nothing to do with the light bulbs. It was just the staff felt the management cared. So I think faking that, and there's some lecturers in particular, Brendan is one of them, who he has this ability to fake sincerity. I don't know how he does it, but he has this ability to make it seem real. Whereas with Brian, I think it's always genuine, the sincerity. But some people have an amazing ability, whether they're up, down, happy, sad, they can knock out, I'm trying to do this for you guys to learn. So that's really important.
Can I actually like just to give you like really briefly one little small case study about what I meant, or just example, right? So I was more talking about like creativity in your teaching practice. Like you might have an idea, oh man, that'd be cool to do with my class. You have to be brave to try these things out. I'll give you an example, right? So I teach Conway's Game of Life, and it was one Thursday morning. We were doing Conway's Game of Life. We're mixing the colors together, a very nice interactive tutorial with the students. And at the end of the class, it's like, wow, we'd made this beautiful thing. And I had this idea, and I just went for it. I projected it up on the 2 huge big screens, right? And I found a beautiful track of music, and I turned the volume up really high, and everybody sat back in the lecture theater, and this thing was evolving in front of everybody. This idea just came to me spontaneously. I says, right, let's do this. And afterwards, even I was amazed. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be brave in the lecture sometimes. That's and that sort of creative spirit was what I was kind of like referring to. I have loads of other cool examples like that, but that was one of my happy memories from last year of something like that I tried that worked out incredibly successfully. You know, it was memorable for me and my students. And like, of course, they're learning about iterating over 2D arrays and cellular automata, which is such a like an interesting area of computer science. So
And it's something
and good crack. You have to have crack in the classroom.
Totally. I definitely think exactly, and it's an anchor then for them for everything around it. They'll remember that and remember everything around it as well. But the same way I've definitely gotten the students to do activities. There's a very common one where you just ask them, without talking to anybody, sequence yourself based on your date of birth. So people who are born in January will normally go to the left, people in December on the right, people in September will say will kind of go 3/4 of the way across. Normally it works incredibly well. One year I did it and everybody was wrong. Like every person was wrong. And I was saying, this is unbelievable. I can't believe how this has gone wrong. And again, it was so dramatically wrong because I was trying to make a point about how people are incredibly good at estimating after 150,000 years of evolution.
Very good.
And apparently they're not really that good at it. But it works anyway. It definitely works. And I definitely think trying things out is so important. I do have
it's great that we have the freedom to do that. Like, it's great that we have the freedom. Yeah.
I do always have a hotel reception bell with me, so that if things go horribly wrong, I'll just go, okay, can we come back now, please? And that always works. So I know some lecturers are very afraid if they give the power over to the students, they won't come back, if you know what I mean. So then just by having that, it makes them, it's an immediate, all right, normally I put it on the floor and we'll dong it on the floor. As to Tina's point, hybrid versus blended, definitely that's how the terms are being used. Hybrid meaning, we'll say synchronous or concurrent at the same time, blended meaning one after the other, but different. Again, Americans are using it slightly different. Australians are using it very differently as well. And we always look to Australia because they have such a phenomenal experience in teaching over long distances. Since the 60s and 70s, they've had these radio schools where people in remote farms have these kind of CB systems, and they're sent out big packets of they don't do that anymore, but they used to be sent out these big packets of lessons, and every day the teacher would come on and the student would, they're not called CB radios, whatever they're called, high frequency radios anyway, so they have a profound knowledge of this distance stuff, as well as the Open University in the UK, Canada as well, because it's so big. They have a lot of experience in this kind of thing. But I definitely think, again, the term blended, I'm just thinking of it meaning anything to do with a kind of computer. So we won't get het up on the ins and outs of it. If there's a computer there at all, sure, it's grand, if that makes sense. Perfect. I might just explain the workbook as well. So the key output of the last project was a book. Hey. So Tina was in charge of the project, so she got all the money from all the publication rights. So this is just to go back in time for the old project. It was about, I think, 130 years ago. I can't remember, but it could have been about 5 years ago. Anyway, a number of partners got together to build a workbook for blended learning, and they were UPI again, as well as our colleagues in Dom Spain and ourselves and other colleagues. And we wrote a 120-page workbook. 8 chapters in it, and I'll just briefly mention them. One chapter was just explaining really what I've been saying up till now about different ideas of what blended learning is. The second chapter is how to create a pilot, how to do a very simple activity in blended learning. The third one is just thinking about issues around accessibility and copyright and different things like that. The fourth is a bunch of tools and a bunch of activities to more complicated blending activities. The fifth is thinking about the students' needs and what training or what skills we might need to upskill them with to make them benefit from this blended learning stuff. The sixth is just to make sure the management is happy, because that's a big deal. And a lot of these initiatives, you're going along teaching incredibly well, and then the manager gets wind of it and makes a big grumpy point about procedure number 3729 forbids any allowed. You just so how to get them on side is covered in chapter 6. Chapter 7 is alternative tools to use for the activities, different search engines, different video editors, different audio editors, different document types, all kinds of things like that. And then the last chapter is how do we evaluate the success or not of a teaching initiative. It's particularly tricky, I think, for lecturers because we're writing the exam paper and marking the assignments anyway. So if we are positive about an initiative, we might inadvertently, completely unconsciously mark things more positively than they are, or respond more positively. So there are some objective benchmarks to help us in that. I think the biggest thing to take out of the workbook is that we identified 6 kinds of blending, 6 kinds of things you could do that I think are interesting, and I'll just go through them one at a time. I'm going to put a link in the chat in a second as well, just that has a link to both the workbook and indeed everything, all the slides here. One thing both we can do, or we could ask our students to do, is create a presentation, either in PowerPoint or in Prezi. PowerPoint has a new feature in the last couple of years called Morph that allows you to zoom in and out of images really, really well. So it's a transition between slides, and I think it's gotten kind of killed Prezi completely because it's a whole excellent way of displaying information. It's something I would certainly do for most of my student groups, is get them to do a presentation in groups. So we would think that as a form of blended learning if we just ask them to do a presentation. Sometimes I give them a list of topics and they pick whatever they want, or sometimes it's the last couple of parts of the course. I ask different people to do it, and they present, and then if it's no good, I give my own slides on it. So a presentation of any kind, we try and make it accessible and try and make it big. I have a kind of rule when I'm teaching online, or indeed in some of the classrooms, because the screens are small, I try and make my font size 22 or 24 at least. So I've deliberately structured these slides with a big bar on the bottom specifically so that I can stop myself putting too much text in. Number 2 was audio of any kind. We know that students are on buses. We know that students are waiting in queues. So if there's any way we can give them audio information, and there's lots of tools now that nicely take text and generate MP3s for them for free. There's good ones out there, as well as just recording on your phone or on your laptop. I do like the idea, and it's something I've done a lot of myself, of tried to add soundscapes of some kinds to the podcasts. Just a bit of background noise that will come in one stereo. If they're listening in stereo, that'll go from one earpiece to the other, just to make it sound like there's a 3D realized audio experience there. Just even a bit of introduction music at the start that hops around from earbud to earbud or whatever is nice, I think. And again, it pulls them through. Any way we can pull them through the screen is really important, I think. Any way we can make it interactive. I always start classes, for example, with a round of applause for myself, just to try and, again, push through the thing. Definitely the third type we looked at is creating videos. And again, on your mobile phone, whatever it is, we also just explain how to add subtitles, how to make videos interactive. There's a lot of nice tools for having a video, being able to pause it, adding multi-choice questions in, and then thinking about making them accessible as well. How to make documents, could be PDFs, could be Word documents, could be whatever. We maybe as an activity, we ask the students to write a paper, write a newspaper article, create an infographic, whatever. So there's all kinds of documents we could ask our students to do. It's not simply just write an essay type question. There's plenty of stuff we could get them to write a review of a particular bit of software in the style of, you know, a product review style article. Pretend they're a consultant and ask them to give us a consultancy report on a particular topic, whatever it is. Them generating documents is a really important skill that they have, and there's plenty of ways we can jazz them up. Number 5 is creating games and gamification. And again, there's a lot of tools online to generate simple games like word searches and crosswords and hangman type games and things like that, to encourage people. There is a dark side of gamification as well. If we kept scoreboards and made students feel like they were in competition with each other. So we don't want that side of it. We want, as Brian said, the fun side, the engaging side. And something that is old-fashioned, but I absolutely love, is using search engines to search, get the students to go on a scavenger hunt, a quest on the web, where they search for different answers to different questions, give them quizzes, and get them to do stuff. And the more complicated style quizzes are called web quests. So there's plenty of kinds of activities in the workbook, and I'm going to pop out of that for a second, stop sharing, and I'm going to just put a link in the chat to the page that has everything on it we're doing at the moment. And I might just share my screen, and then I might ask Dom Spain to give a presentation, if that's okay. Perfect. So I'll just show my screen for about 5 minutes, and then I'll turn it over to you, if that's okay. So hopefully, all going well, you guys are seeing the link I just sent, which is this week's, what we're talking about this week. So we're just talking about blended learning for the moment, and we're thinking about the quality blended learning workbook. If we click on let's have a look, it takes us to the workbook, where we will see the 8 chapters we outlined, and the 6 different kinds of activities, and particularly in chapters 4 and 7, there's a lot of detail how to create those activities. The workbook is bleeding slow, so I'll get back to it. We're going to think about a few other topics and try out a few more tools, and then at the very bottom there, just what we'll be doing in the following weeks. So this week is week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we'll be doing lots of fun stuff and learning about all kinds of wacky and crazy stuff. I've included a couple of videos in this page just to show that there's other views on what blended learning is out there, which is always the case. And I'll just say that anytime I provide a link to a Wikipedia page, I always provide a separate link to the talk page. Give us a Y or an in, yes or no, in the chat. Have you ever looked at the talk page on a Wikipedia page? Give us a yes or no. I think it's the most fascinating part of the pages normally. It's where different users discuss what content should be in the page and what content should not be in the page. So it can be extremely controversial depending on the topic. Something, for example, called a full Irish breakfast, which there was extraordinary debate about. It normally consists of eggs, bacon, black pudding, white pudding, and sausages. The 2 different kinds of pudding, black and white. A lot of people were arguing that it only needs black pudding, whereas others were arguing, no, it needs white as well. So that debate raged on for months and months and months. And this is each number here is does hash browns go in there? Hey, what about the Atkins diet? Is it mainly pork? Can we change that image? Can we add more references? What are the regional variations? And people discuss and say we should merge these. And there's lots of different chat about it. Just to understand how knowledge is constructed, these sites I think are extremely useful to show off that. So anytime I'll provide a link to a Wikipedia page, I always make it a point of creating a separate link just to the talk page, just to highlight the fact that that's also very important. So all we'll be doing for the next while is I want to turn it over to Dom Spain for 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll talk about teaching and technologies. I wanted to turn it over to Spain in particular, because not only have they been our wonderful colleagues over the years, but they know how to do kick-ass presentations. Like, I was looking at the slides the guys created, and I thought, oh my God, these are gorgeous. It's not fair. as a computer scientist, as a lecturer, it's you know, there's certain things I'm good at, and creating really brilliant slides just doesn't happen to be one of them. I can create good slides and they're all right, but definitely some people just have a knack for it, and I definitely Dom Spain is that. So if you guys wouldn't mind giving an introduction to Dom Spain, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, can I share my screen?
Definitely, indeed. Do you have a share button up there beside the leave button?
Okay. Can you see it?
Beautiful, thank you.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Perfectly, yeah, we can see it. It's not maximized yet.
Okay, perfect. We
No.
try to, just to a recap about the partners, as you said before. Then we try to talk about a bit about ourselves, that we are an adult education and training center. We have activities at local level. We coordinate and implement national and international projects. And we work also in consulting and supporting public bodies, small and medium enterprises, and organization and networks. But just a moment. Okay, national level, but the most important part is at international level, because in that project we are like cooperating and in international network, and it is the main also of our project, like an international pool of teachers that are working together and exchanging good practices and about educational tools. So we work at online learning platforms and training groups of educators. And about some trainings that we have, as you said before, in 2019 we had the first part of our project, Blended Learning Introduction for Adult Educators, practical suggestion for combining e-learning with classroom activities, as you already explained before, better than me, of course. And about case study, because our teachers, our professors, will work on personal case studies. So they will try to, first of all, write something about them, like name and position, then time and chronological information about the classes, place and geographical location, because we will have lots of countries. So something a bit, a place where they are having their classes, their learning classes, and people and individuals involved in online classes or in blended classes, and ethic of case. About case study also, professors will work about evidence, so sources and information the students that can investigate, situation before the intervention, because of course then we will have to take care about challenges and issues that we will have during our classes. Then the intervention that we will have about technology education organizations, because it will be a process. So it will be like focusing at beginning, and then while we will have our classes, and after the intervention with the outcomes that we will reach or not. And we will have some key issues of the case, because I'm pretty sure that we will have good and bad things that we can discuss in our next meetings and in our next. Each case is different than the others, because students and classes are not all the same, so we have to adapt the materials for each group, each class and each student. Then we have to confirm or disconfirm the evidence, because we can be right or not about our ideas. And so it's a bit like that, like investigating, having some case studies, trying to have like a process at beginning while we are having our classes, and at the end, like having an evaluation For what I understood is a bit of the mean of the case studies, like trying to process, to evaluate, to analyze each class, and then to compare, to understand something else, and to improve ourselves. I mean, our teachers, our professors.
Thank you very much.
Next time in Italian will be easier, please.
Thank you, Ariana.
Perfect. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And that's,
Grazie.
in terms of how beautiful that's laid out, what clearly explained it is, how bullet point is using the arrows to show the range of different approaches. I think that's really beautiful slides. And we'll definitely talk more about the case studies also in each week. That's really great. Thank you so much. And Dom Spain have been such a good partner, both in this project in terms of designing things, but also in the previous project. I just wanted to ask an easy one as I see it. You know how a bunch of students come into a room and listen to some Egypt at the front talking, and we call that teaching. Why do we do that? I want you to think about that for a minute. Instead of just giving the students a book, give them a book and get them to read it. So I want everyone to think about what's the purpose of that. Why do we teach? So that's the topic, and I'm going to ask everybody to type a message in. Thanks a million. Why do you think we teach? What's the benefit of it, I wonder? What the hell are we doing it for? Like, why don't we just give the students, I think, £500 and say, just read this book? Would they do it? I think they might. So it's the fundamental issue, I think. Why do we bother? Keeps us in jobs, I know. Keeps us in jobs, yes, fair enough. That's true. And is there any other situation in your life where you walk into a room and everybody pays attention to everything you say? No, they wouldn't. I don't think they would either, Brendan, unfortunately. In fact, I said it to my students one time, and I did this. I went into the library and put a £20 note in a library book on the subject I was teaching and said, if anyone can find that, they can have it. And nobody, a lot of students put up their hand and said, where's the library again? To share knowledge, excellent, absolutely. To transmit knowledge and to spark, brilliant. Oh, Tina, that's excellent. Yes.
For example, in my case, I remember that when I was teaching, from one side I was trying to teach something, but from the other side I was learning. So it's like at the same time, it's a bilateral process.
Definitely, I definitely think so. To connect, and I definitely think, yeah, does. Yes, so yes, absolutely, indeed. I have a very specific thought about it, which is I believe in primitive tribes there's a medicine man, a shaman, who talks to the spirits, and I think that's roughly what teachers do. There's a body of knowledge that's imaginary. It's imaginary knowledge, and the teacher intercedes, goes to that body of knowledge, goes to that magical place and brings back ideas to the tribe. I don't believe it terribly seriously, but I think it's a model of looking at it, that there's weird abstract knowledge that's nowhere in reality, and you're trying to concretize it the same way that most shamans weren't really talking to spirits, but were giving good practical advice on how to live your life. Brendan says to help train, educate, prepare the next generation for the workplace. Absolutely. Imparting our knowledge and experience to help them know what is and isn't important. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely, indeed. Ability to pass on knowledge from one generation to the next. I definitely think I see it as a privilege. I see it as a privilege indeed that we get that opportunity. I might, just for fun, give you my top 10 answers first. So my top 10 answers for why we teach. First things first, if you can see the picture of the gentleman there, it's J. Robert Oppenheimer. He was responsible. He was project manager on the atomic bomb. He was also supposed to be an outstanding lecturer. A lot of students would deliberately fail his classes to see him again, and a lot of students would pass his classes and just come year after year after year. You guys said it to motivate, to enthuse the students, to get them excited about a topic. So that's I was talking about the banana example. I definitely think we have to try and put ourselves in their shoes. If I've taught a topic for many years, sometimes I start saying, "Oh, come on! Every other year of student understood this. Why can't you guys understand it?" Or sometimes I just think, "Oh, I've explained this 10 times already, but not to you." So just to think about what it's like to be new, to clearly to give the students the information they need. And we always make the point that speaking everything out is fine, but it's not always possible. So giving out material as handouts or some other form of document is a good idea, as long as we put lots of blank space in so the students can note stuff. Obviously, we have to cover a particular syllabus because our subjects connect with others, but it is important to give the students a chance to reflect. And I think they should be required to create a one-page summary of every course they do, so that then they can't pretend later, "Oh, I've never heard of that term before." This is a very interesting one, and I was talking to my online class about this last night. I teach an online class, and they were saying, we don't really have a sense of camaraderie or togetherness. So that's definitely tricky with an online class. With whether it's online or in person, group work is important. Group work is one way of getting people to know each other, forcing them to get to know each other. Because it's cheap, that's a big reason, really. The real reason, possibly one of the main reasons we teach, is because it's a cheaper way of communicating information from one group to another. Big groups are tricky, though, so just to we had lecturers discussing the challenges of teaching 200 students in a previous meeting there, and he was saying that at the end of the class, about 20 students run down to ask him 20 different questions, so he's stuck for another half an hour to an hour after the class. Normally, what I do when I teach big classes is give them a post-it note or a card each to write down a question on it, and I just collect all the cards and I say, I'll answer these. And then the start of the next lecture, the first 10 minutes, often is explaining the answers, because very often the questions are always the same over and over again. To help map out where they are in the curriculum in terms of what year they're in and what content they're doing. Always to remind them occasionally what the learning outcomes, the goals of this particular subject is important, to see how they're doing. And I definitely felt in lockdown, this was the one thing I really missed. And I didn't realize how much I relied on looking at their faces to just figure out how the information is working for them. If I explain something and their face looks like, then I know they don't understand it. Whereas with online, I wasn't necessarily able to see their faces. And then when we came back, they were all wearing masks, so it was equally as bad. It really was a major tool I use to assess how effectively my teaching was going, that I lost completely during lockdown. And even when we came back, not so much. Looking at their faces helps definitely a lot. Change their beliefs somewhat. If they believe, and particularly about computers, when our students sign up, they think they're doing a course on how to play with Facebook or how to play video games or things like that. So we have to change them into understanding computers are fun on the outside, but there's a lot of work involved in making them work on the inside. And often it is, to Brendan's point, giving them our experience, giving them theories, getting them talk to other students about things, and it can change their perspective and enhance their knowledge about a particular area. The one thing we do is help them learn, so we give them rhymes or poems or little codes that they can learn off to remember things. And we can structure information and say, if you look at the first letter of each of these things, you can spell out the word banana, and then you just have to learn the word banana, so we can help them. So something I do a lot is require that students take notes, and then I ask the students to swap their notes with everybody else in the class, just to see, swap them in pairs, just so that they can see other people are taking different notes than they are. I ask them to look down their notes and maybe highlight the 3 most important things that they think we've talked about in the class. What 3 things can you remember? And again, if you ask a group of students, different students will take different things as being the three most important things. So you kind of cover the whole topic you've had by just asking them that. We might do a version of that. Also, and this is definitely a reasonable point. When we interact with students, they figure out how we want them to create their assessments. They're figuring out, oh, Damien likes things that have a bit of creativity. No, Damien likes things that are exactly from the notes. Oh no, Damien requires that I need to go to a book and learn more about this. So there's an assessment culture that every lecturer has. They have a particular approach, ideas. They think a particular way. Different teachers who teach the same subject do it in such a different way that strategic students, smart students, will think about what is the lecturer going to ask on assessments and exams, and what are they looking for? Are they looking for fun? Are they looking for creativity? Are they looking for just exactly the facts as they have it in their notes? What are they looking for? So that can be really, really effective. They'll figure out your culture of assessment the more you interact with them, and that could be online or in place. Just things that I do that may or may not be noteworthy, but I keep a notebook of every class I teach, including this one, and I just write down what went well and what went badly. And if somebody asked me a question or gave me an interesting thought, I write it down. And then once I've it written down, the next time I teach it, even if I never look at the notes again, the next year I'll know not to do that or to do that, more of that. So I actually find writing it down, or sometimes if somebody suggests something, I change my slides immediately then, so that the next year the change will be there for them. And kinds of things I think about is what went well and what went badly, what surprised me, what questions did the student ask, and what questions could they not answer. This is the only real teachy bit I'll talk about. There's a Soviet psychologist called Lev Vygotsky. He pointed out that if I teach too quickly, and I teach a lot of big concepts fast, it'll be very stressful for the students. But if I teach things too slowly, it'll be very boring for the students if I take things so slowly and give another example, another one. So if I go too fast, it's stressful. If I go too slow, it's boring. There is a middle bit in between, the zone of development, the zone of proximal development it's called. And in that zone, you're going exactly at the right pace for the students. It's so easy to do that if I'm teaching a student one-to-one. And sometimes I do that. I've been teaching an adult actually how to read and write, teaching him basic alphabet, ABC stuff. And he says to me, oh, you're going too fast, or you're going too slow. And great, I can get exactly the rate. Now, if I have a class of 30 students or 100 students or 200 students, different students will go at different rates. So I need to be aware that let's say the most advanced student in the class, I'll be going too fast for, and the weakest student in the class, I'll be going too slowly for. If I have 100 students in the class and they're numbered 1 to 100, 100 being the best student in the class and 1 being the weakest student in the class, if I was to decide what number of student I should teach to, would you mind typing in the chat what number of student I should teach to? Should I teach to the 50, the middle student? Should I teach to the bottom third, the 33rd student, so that then 66 students know what I'm talking about, but 33 don't? Should I teach to the 75th student? So 25% of students I'm probably going at the right pace or too slowly for, but most of them I'm going too fast for. What number would you say would be good? And I'll unshare my screen just so I can see numbers. What number do we? 42? No way! It's the answer to life, the universe, and everything, of course.
Damien,
could
you repeat the question, please?
Sure. If I go, what pace should I go at so that I'm bringing as many students along as I want? If I go at the pace of the slowest student, there's going to be 99 students, assuming we have 100, who I'm going too slow for. And certainly the top 50 are going to be very bored because I'm going at the pace of the very slowest student. If I go at the pace of the top student, there's 99 students I'm going too fast for. And there's probably definitely 50 of the weakest students that I'm going way too fast for, and there's no way they can cope with it. So what speed should I be going at? Like what student, if there's 100 students, what student should I pick to be? This is the right pace. As Brian said, like we want to bring everyone along, but if we bring everyone along, does that mean we go slow enough so that the weakest student, so let's say the brightest student needs 1 example, the weakest student needs 10 examples. Should we go at the rate of the weakest student? So we give 10 examples and 9 of them are boring the hell out of the brightest student. Me, I'm around, actually, Brendan is probably right. I'm around the 33, 40, somewhere like that. We go somewhere in the middle. Absolutely. Somewhere in the middle is all you can do, really. I suppose the only point that's worth making is with this online stuff, at least for the weak students, we can say, go off and look at this, take it at your own pace. For the strong students, we can say, hey, there's a lot of online material that you can do that's more sophisticated, more complicated. So if we create content or create links to things for the weaker students that says, here's this explained in more detail, and then a later section saying, here's advanced content for the advanced students, then we can balance it out. But it is impossible to teach at a rate that suits everyone. That's just it. Unfortunately, that's just it. Ideally, 1-to-1 would be perfect, but we have to make a rough estimate. All right, how about this one? So if I'm teaching first aid, so helping people resuscitate people, out of 100%, what percentage would you think the minimum a first aider should get before you'd allow them to pass and say they're qualified to do first aid? Type it in. It's your life on the line here, guys. Agreed. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Okay. All right, let's do martial arts. So if I was teaching somebody judo or karate, what percentage should they get to pass, we'll say, to be a sufficient karate master? They can learn the first few bodies will be a bit awkward, but what the hell? 1%. Okay, great. 70, good, sensible. Like it, like it, like it. This isn't Gears of War or something. All right, we'll try pilot of a plane. What percentage should the pilot of a plane get in piloting lessons? I should hope so, indeed. Let anyone pass, absolutely, indeed. 10% as the computer. Oh, nice. Fly by wire. I love it. Absolutely, indeed. Good, good, good. That's it. That's it. I definitely think these are deep and profound questions. I presume everybody knows that this in Ireland. Do you know what they call somebody who got 40% in their medical exams? Yup. You called them doctor. Of course, you called them doctor because for some subjects at least, 40% is the 40% is the minimum required amount. Just we have these ideas, I think, in terms of the assessment. I think is an important one to decide what level we're trying to say is competency. We had a very interesting conversation with our 40 is a murderer. Absolutely, I would have thought so. A doctor, a murderer to you, though. Our we have a partnership with the Chinese university. Their pass rate is 60%. Our pass rate is 40%. We talked about what were the attributes, or what were the things that somebody who's getting 60% should be able to show in the Chinese university. And we were amazed, but not really surprised, to find that they were the exact same attributes that we were giving for students who were getting 40%. Because we all have an idea as professionals of what a competent person is like, roughly. We might give that, we could give that number 99, we could give that number 40, but there is an unconscious, I think, ability to figure out what kind of things do they need to know, essentially, to be able to do their job. And if you call that 60 or 40 or whatever, your marking scheme goes, it depends, exactly, indeed, it depends on the individual's work experience as well, I think. I worked in a lot of small Irish IT companies and only a few large American ones. So I have a particular idea of what I would like a computer science graduate to be. Different people have different ideas. That determines a little bit, to me, how I mark things, the things that I think are significant. I'm always of a mind that they need to be all arounders in terms of analysis, design, development, testing, and all that, whereas different people see it differently. I definitely think, though, just to wash away that concept of how will we say it, a number being important, and numbers aren't important, and number of students, even what number of student are we thinking about teaching for? It's different on different days, it's different on different topics. Sometimes you look at the students and a lot of them are plainly confused, so you have to teach to the student number 20, then other times they're flying along, so you teach to number 80. But there's so much that we do that's quite amazingly evolutionary and quite thoughtful. It's amazing. To help us think about the tools and technologies that we might look at in terms of blending, there is a kind British educational researcher who every year asks a bunch of e-learning people and blended learning people what's hot and what's not this year. So there's the British researcher is called Dr. Jane Hart. She works in Sheffield University, I think. It probably says it on my slides anyway, but I'll check. Jane Hart, yeah, Centre for Learning. She sends out a survey every year to any lecturer, really, and says, what's happening in learning? What are the good blended learning, e-learning tools this year? So the complete list of tools are there. There's a link on the page as well. I'm just going to give you the top 20 just to show you how excitingly boring a lot of the tools are. For 2022, that should say. YouTube was the top tool this year that e-learning experts up till August voted is the best tool for educational purposes. PowerPoint was second. Getting them to search stuff on Google, using Teams and Zoom, obviously, for online stuff. Google Docs for getting them to create documents and generate content in a shared way. LinkedIn to, I think there's excellent professional talks and videos and content on LinkedIn, as well as obviously linking into your, helping students picture what it's like to have a job. Microsoft Word was number 8, up 4 places. Canva, which is an e-learning tool, we'll talk about it, was number 9, and Wikipedia was number 10. Again, I like using Wikipedia. I don't like students referencing it or using it as an academic source, but to get an overview of a topic, Wikipedia can be very good. Slack, I know plenty of people here use it. Excel, for sure, obviously. Twitter can be very helpful. Well, now that Elon Musk has ruined it for all of us with his stupid blue checks, it's all gone to hell, but it was going well there. WordPress, which is a kind of bloggy thing. Articulate for creating videos and interactive content from PowerPoint. Kahoot and Mentimeter 16 and 17 are voting tools in the classroom where I have my phone and the lecturer says, bile comes from what organ of the body? Is it A, the liver, B, the spleen, C, the small intestine, or D, the heart? everybody vote A, B, C, or D on their phone now. Click. And then the result comes up on the PowerPoint and we see exactly what people have voted for. Instagram is 18, Facebook is 19, and Vimeo, which is a video hosting site like YouTube, is number 20. What I would like to do is put the link to the top 200 tools into the chat. And if everybody wouldn't mind just typing in the name of 2 tools you've never heard of before, that'd be really, really fun. So I'm just gonna put the link into the chat. Here we go. And then have a look at the list. I think you have to scroll down the page a little bit. And we see 1, 2, 3. Just have a look at the list and type in the names of 2 tools you haven't heard of, please. Thanks very much. Into the chat. Get on. Okay, I love it. I love it. I'll do a class with you on it. Truth Social, yay! Woo! Trump. He's never going away, Trump. Power. Snag it. Great. Okay, snag it. Good. Good. I use it for taking pictures of people in chats. It's like the print screen function, but better. Canva, great. Feedly, yes, absolutely indeed. Miro, yeah. Miro is an obscure enough one. Any other takers? Mentimeter, great. Slack, yeah, absolutely indeed. Vion, no, I haven't heard of that either. Must be new this year. Quiz. Love it. I love it. I love it. Keep well away from that stuff. Genially. Great. Yeah, absolutely indeed. Right. 2022? Is there a Visual Studio 2022? That's Netflix. Hey, look, that's educational. I definitely think the quality of documentaries they're doing. There's a great one on internet addiction that I was looking at, that the social problem is called or something. I thought, God, this is brilliant. I'm just going to take clips from this, go onto a torrent site, download it, take clips from it and play it in my classes. Social Dilemma, that's exactly it. Yeah, they did a really good job. Metaverse, yeah, I think we're going to get there in terms of the metaverse. I think Mark Zuckerberg read the book Ready Player One. In that book, Steven Spielberg made a movie of it. All the kids go to school by putting on their virtual reality goggles, and there's just classrooms that they go to and learn that way. Definitely. So I think that's a new string. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that's a way we're going for sure. And I definitely think for poorer people, they'll definitely do that. They'll just say, yeah, you don't need an education, you just need a VR headset. Yeah, absolutely. TikTok, absolutely indeed. There's only so much you can teach in TikTok. The same way, sometimes I was helping somebody create some e-learning content a few days ago, and part of what they had done was create this really beautiful blueprints of a device. And I was saying, that's great, but think the students are looking at it on a very small screen, so it's just too much detail. Could you chunk it up into 6 parts so that they can look at one bit at a time, or find some way of allowing them to zoom in nicely? Because for some reason the image they had created wasn't zoomable nicely. My take is usually start with a very simplified image and build up to a more complicated one, rather than give the students the answer straight away. In the olden days, and I know I sound like a grumpy old man here, when I was in college, lecturers would draw diagrams on the board so you'd understand each part as they were creating it, or they'd fill out a table, each row at a time, so then you'd know how the table was constructed. Whereas now, when we present things completed, they don't get a sense of, oh, how do you put this together? It's always worth. So that's why I think definitely blended is the way to go in terms of having a whiteboard and writing stuff out. and giving things to people at their own pace. A machine that downloads directly from the brains of students. What would we do with the rest of the memory on the computer, though? That's what I want to know. That's not a bad idea at all. All right. So the only other thing really I want, Joan, of course, Joan, you're absolutely right. The Jerry Anderson. Only two other things I want to show you guys, and then we're done. So this is nice and easy. I'm going to go back on the site again. So the top 200 tools. If you want to, for the next class, if you fancy picking a tool you haven't heard of and have a look at it, just clicking on the page, that could be fun. Just in terms of the buttons and banners I've created, I use something called Da Button Factory to do them. It's free and it allows you to generate buttons and banners quite easily. So you type in whatever text, they're advertising stuff. You type in whatever text you want here, blah, 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 and you press return, and then that becomes the text on the button. We can make the text bigger just by increasing the size of the font over here on the left. We can change the color of it to blue if we want to. In terms of the image, we can have it all as one color, or maybe we can have it just half one color, half another color, or slowly changing from one color to the next, or even changing the middle. So let's say we want to do something shocking for the eyes. Let's say bright green. And bright red. And bright red. Okay. Ooh, okay. Yikes. Let's do that as a gradient. Not bad. Let's just do a lighter red. How about? Pretty. Okay. And then we could put a border around it just to make it look 3D. So let's add a border. Let's make it reddish. Okay. Hey, then we get a button for free. We can save it as a different types, GIF or JPEG or PNG. And we just click download and it'll download. We don't want to see any of my downloads because I might get in trouble, but it's a really neat and simple way of generating buttons or banners. We can make the buttons as long as we want simply by saying, let's make it a size. Let's make it, I don't know, 500 pixels. This is pixels in size. Then we've got a big wide banner. There's all kinds of ways we can play around with that tool. It's a bit of fun. It's really handy for creating buttons that you can click on or banners. The other one I wanted to mention was multicolor. So if I have a set of colors for my project or my classes, as we can see for my web page, they're usually bluish. So if I want to find images that are blue, I just click on the color I want. And this tool from TinEye Labs will go off to all of the Creative Commons, the open source images that are available from Flickr or Picasso or any of those image tools, and find images of that color for me. And now that's a bit of fun. But let's say I want to add in a bit of yellow as well. So I can click on as many colors as I want, and it'll go and try and find images that have that composition of colors. Our composition is there in step 2, so we can get rid of any we don't want anymore just by pressing the delete button. And then we can get nicely themed and colored images. I think this is really great. I always just do the Mayo colors where I'm from. So I look for things that are half green and half red. If I put my mouse right between the two colors here on the right, I can pull the percentage one way or the other. So I can say, give me some images that are mostly red, but with a little green in them. are mostly green with little red in them. I think this is really, really useful for branding and logoing and things like that, and just creating images or colors that are of a specific type. So that's a bit of fun, definitely, indeed. And I have slides for that as well that you can look at. So that's it. Can I look by object? You can type in the name of the label. So there's a label feature as well. So the step 3 is to give it a name. If you want an image of a car, no problem, just type in car. Perfect. All right. That's it for today. That's it. I didn't want the first session to be too long. An hour and a half is plenty. So we'll finish off there. I'll see you next week. I don't know what day that is yet. We have to get a group of partners. But now that this is all recorded anyway, every partner has agreed to give us all the first group €500 each. And this is recorded, so that's a contract. Is that true, Tina? Tina agrees, brilliant. Our verbal contract is binding in Ireland, I love. Right. All right. So we'll finish it off. We'll say thank you very much for attending. Paul is going to save this video and then chop bits out of it, like what is blended learning and things like that. And next week we'll talk properly about the goals of the project and exactly how we're going to do each bit of it. But I definitely, the big takeaway really is the 6 kinds of activities I mentioned: documents, presentations, searching activities, games, videos, and podcasts. Those are 6 different kinds of things that you probably do already, that if you want to use those as the things you're doing for blended learning, that's perfect. But as Brian and Brendan have said, even if you want to try something extra on top, that'd be lovely as well. It's more interesting to me though when the students don't respond to things than when they do. When they respond positively, I think it's terrible. There's no learning there. Whereas if they're very grumpy, then you think, okay, we've learned something. Perfect. All the slides are available. I'll put the link up. I'll put the link up as soon. Does anyone have a copy of the link to the homepage? It's up there somewhere. I'll find it. There it is. Yeah, got it.
Thank you so much, Damien. That was
problem.
really great. Thank you,
Very
everyone,
nice.
for attending. I hope I can make it for next week as well. It's exciting because we don't know when it's going to happen. But yes, I'll definitely forward the links to the teachers, to colleagues, and to partners from Greece. And do we have somebody from Cyprus today here?
I don't think so.
I saw one name that maybe could be, but okay, never mind. We continue next week.
Thanks a million, everyone. I really appreciate your contributions more than anything else. You make this fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Damien.
have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See you next
Bye.
week.
See you.